You want to know what my least favorite set is? It's not Final Fantasy, it's not Spider-Man, it's not going to be TMNT. It's Modern Horizons. If I could change one thing about Magic, getting rid of Universes Beyond would not be it. Don't get me wrong, I hate Universes Beyond and think it is strictly bad for the game long term. I made a whole separate video about it here. But I don't think that it's the worst thing to happen to Magic. As much as I think VV and the One Ring are design mistakes, Nadu and Hogak are also design mistakes. But of course, those are not Universes Beyond. Let's talk about slop for a moment. A little while ago, there was a relatively infamous post online made by Jeffrey White, and it's about pigs and slop. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, you can pause if you want to. But basically, he compares MTG to a restaurant that begins to serve slop to satiate pigs. Most people thought this was about Universes Beyond, but it's apparently about EDH cards. And when looking at it that way, I actually do kinda agree a little bit about Commander in Magic. But the point is, this post created a big us versus them mentality in the community. The sloppy pigs versus the UB haters. And I found this dynamic to be pretty dumb. Look, I hate UB more than most people. But it's not the death of the game, nor is it the biggest problem Magic is facing. But I do think Magic is heading in the direction of slop, just a different kind. That's what I want to talk about today, the slopification of Magic. The biggest problem Magic is facing, and how we can turn it around. Okay, I need to clear up a couple of things real quick. One, this isn't a Magic is Dead video. If that happens, I'll be sure to clickbait it, don't worry. Actually, I'll talk about that later in this video. Another thing I want to clear up is dispelling some opinions I see in the comments. I'm not a fan of people dismissing the dislike of Universes Beyond or other things as being resistant to change. Magic has changed a lot over the years, and much of it is great. I really liked Edge of Eternities. I think it's fine to depart from high fantasy. I think some of the weirder art we get in Secret Layers is really fun. All that said though, it doesn't mean I think every change Magic makes is good. On the opposite side, one big issue I have with the slop conversation is calling people names like pigs. Doesn't feel very productive. Little Timmy did not make the Spider-Man set bad. They did not write up the contracts that prevented its printing on Magic Arena. Getting mad at regular people for decisions a corporation makes is completely unproductive. And finally, I am not pointing the blame at any random Wizards employee, or even Hasbro employee either. Comments like that come up anytime I'm talking about a decision the company makes which is bad. But please know, I am pointing the blame at the Hasbro C-suite and board of directors. I know why people might assume I might be mad at random employees though. A lot of hack video essayists will call game devs lazy whenever a game is bad. It happened a lot recently with Pokemon Legends ZA. I agree the game looks like booty and I'm not interested in playing it, but do you really think all the cut corners are because the devs were sleeping on the job? Or is it because they didn't have enough time or employees to finish the game properly? Let's be realistic here. Also, let's put a pin in Legends ZA for a bit and return to the idea of not being able to expand the scope of the company for bigger projects later in the video. Back to slop for a moment. I know the word has been thrown around a lot lately. This is AI slop, child slop, quality slop. Do farmers even slop their hogs anymore? And by the time this video is actually out, I'm sure dozens of other use cases for slop have come out. But when I mean slop, I'm talking about something of low quality or value which is produced quickly. In recent years, Hasbro has made many changes to Magic in an effort to make more money. Players have compared MTG to Fortnite or Lego because of this. But I actually think Magic is not like either of those properties at all. In fact, I wish it was a little bit more like Fortnite. To explain, let's start with some of the changes Hasbro has made. Misprints have spiked a lot in these last few sets. Look at this thing that I opened. You know, these used to be really rare and would sell for actually quite a lot. A misprint was a money card to open, but now it's worthless because they don't have quality control anymore. And then look at this. I have a foil from Modern Horizons 3 Commander and this foil Dizzy spell from Original Ravnica. Both have been stored in the same box, in the same room since I've owned them. Yet, one is a Pringle and is barely sleeve playable, and the other has only just started to curl after 21 years. The foil curling is a massive issue for MTG. Sometimes you'll even find foils are less expensive than the non-foil counterparts. Foil curling is such a big issue that last year at MagicCon Vegas, the event was sponsored by Foil Armor, who has products to prevent this. Yet Foil Armor is giving money to a company who could cause Foil Armor to become obsolete if they took the money and invested it into the quality control. But investing in quality control might mean that Hasbro would need to hire more employees or spend more money, and they're not going to do that. So I don't think Foil Armor is at risk of becoming obsolete and investing in their own downfall. This idea will be another mystery mouse tool for later. Also, no, I'm not sponsored by Foil Armor. Most of my support comes from viewers like you who join my Patreon or channel membership. Here's all my patrons scrolling by saying hi. If you want to support me, consider checking the link below or becoming a channel member. And quality of the physical cards isn't the only thing. Let's talk about the quality of products. Recently, they increased the price of precons again, and they cut the mini bonus collector pack. Plus, these precons don't really have any good reprints. They don't have great mana bases or anything special at all. It's more expensive for less stuff, plain and simple. Hasbro wanted to save money, so the thick cards, giant cards, or any weird unique thing is just gone. Hasbro has also increased the price of collector booster packs, so those are even less valuable. We also now get more sets than ever before. But are these sets the same quality as sets we've had in the past? I'd argue many of them are worse than the average set of yesteryear. Wizards made a change to how they designed sets. Basically, they would not be locked into a 3-set block. We can show up on a plane for 1, 2, or 3 sets if needed. In a vacuum, this is a great idea. More flexibility for the designers. They can do one-off sets and mechanics if that's what standard needs or the story calls for. Awesome, cool. How did this work out though? I want to use Aetherdrift as an example. This is a set that spans 3 planes. This set was hated by players, and I get why. It's pretty bad. Other than the vague theme of racing, what does this set tell us, aesthetically, thematically, or otherwise? Nothing, because it's all jumbled together in one 270 card set. But imagine for a moment if this was a block with 3 sets. Each set focuses on one of the planes at a time. We meet the racers from each plane and the cars they drive. Then there is time in between each set to tell a story about each leg of the race. Each story teases stuff about the next set and the competitors we will meet there. Seeing how each pilot will deal with the unique challenges of every plane or how their vehicles are better suited for their own plane could be really fun and interesting. All of this culminating in the final set, which reveals the Aether Spark itself, an actual genuinely cool, unique card that has lots of deck building and gameplay implications. Would it be good? I don't know. Maybe the racing theme was always too goofy, but I do think that if Aetherdrift was a full block, it would have been received much better than this mess we got. And there are other problems plaguing sets like Aetherdrift. Due to power creep increasing, many of the vehicles are either way too weak to see any play or end up becoming sorceries, where they enter, do a thing, or exhaust, I guess, and then that's it. Crewing and attacking with the vehicles is fairly useless for most of these. I mean, just look at the difference between these vehicles and old ones that you actually wanted to crew and animate to trigger their effects. Speaking of the Aether Spark, I think it's cool to have a unique, crazy card as the chase card for a set. I think it's one of the things Aetherdrift got right. But Spider-Man really missed on this. The Infinity Stone is just a mana rock? It's upgraded charcoal diamond. How uninteresting and uninspired. It's so strange that this ended up being the chase card. Also, Lorwyn. Could have been 2 sets, right? One for Lorwyn, one for Shadowmoor. Maybe that would have been fun. Look, I'm not saying every set needs to be a full block or whatever, but do they all need to be one and done sets? It turns out they do, actually. Now, of course, it is possible that all the designers in Wizards are in agreement and think that this is the best way to tell the story and show off mechanics with just one and done sets. But I'm not sure that's the case. I actually think the reason everything has to be one and done is because Hasbro wants 2 things: flexibility and low commitment. Being a one and done set means that it is flexible in terms of moving the set around. Since it's not connected to another set immediately afterwards, sets like Lorwyn can be delayed so they can fit in Avatar or any other Universes Beyond product that has a more strict contractual obligation. If Lorwyn was multiple sets, you would have to move multiple sets, and that would be very difficult to do. And low commitment, because what if players don't like something? What if racing isn't their jam? If you commit to a 3 set block, then you're pretty stuck. So instead of ever risking profits, if you make everything a one and done, that means players can just ignore a set they don't like, wait a week, and then the next one will drop. Let's put blocks on the board and come back to that again later. Yet another dip in quality is the reprint situation. Reprint sets, which are massive value for players, are gone. I made a whole video about that, and no, I did not forget about bonus sheets in the video. Bonus sheets used to be one in every pack, but they're now one in every 26 packs for play boosters. There's still one in every pack for collector boosters. And these reprint sheets are full of duds, and the cards being reprinted are just the same few ones we've seen reprinted a bunch, while many other cards that need reprints just creep up in price. TMNT has slightly improved this by having a smaller bonus sheet, but it's still only a 4% chance to crack one from a play booster, so they're not super high impact reprints on the price, especially not compared to an actual full reprint set. So these bonus sheets now have less value for players, since the reprints are oftentimes worse and fewer and far between. I wonder how they choose reprints for these. Who's picking Dig Through Time as the time card for Kang? Regardless, giving players good, easy access to reprints might hurt profits in the future because they could put an expensive card in a bonus sheet that you have a 4% chance of opening. So reprints are going to go on the board. Power creep is another thing I won't dwell on for too long because I made a whole separate video about it, but we get way more power creep these days. Every card needs to be powerful enough to be a modern, EDH standard, and legacy all-star. We have seen every format in the game rotate faster and faster and speed up a ton. I know longtime standard players are pining for the days when a card that costs more than 4 mana was playable. I know modern players are wishing that 4 mana cards were still playable. I know some amount of power creep is inevitable in any game like this, but intentionally speeding up the process is moronic. The system of standard allows you to infinitely print weak, slow cards into your game, which then rotate. This is genius because you don't have to power creep. It's an actual solution built into the way the game is made. The fact Hasbro is ignoring the system of standard in favor of trying to squeeze out a few more dollars from modern players is gonna make the game look like Yu-Gi-Oh! Toss power creep on the board. To be clear, I love Yu-Gi-Oh! By the way. I think aesthetically the game is sweet. I mean, old Yu-Gi-Oh! Art is so fun. Like, I know old Magic art's cool, but I'll look at some of these. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a lot of fun at one point. I quit right around Burning Abyss meta. Why? Because the game sucked. Since the game did not have a rotating format and was just one big eternal format, Yu-Gi-Oh! Had pure power creep for years and years to get players to buy new cards. And now, games end on turn 1. Setting your trap card and then activating it is basically something you don't do anymore. There are now cards that put the trap cards into play so you can activate it that turn, or just trap cards you activate from hand. They've power crept the concept of you've activated my trap card from Yu-Gi-Oh! There is functionally no mid-game unless both players draw extremely poorly. I get that some people might find Coin Flip Simulator fun, but I really don't. Powerful cards lower the quality of the game. Look at the One Ring. This stupid card, printed into a direct to modern set, seemed to have been designed as if you could only have one copy of it, which it probably was. I assume this was made to be an easy auto-include for all commander decks. It draws a lot of cards, it's colorless, has other utility. But in Modern, you know the format the set is supposedly going directly into, you just play the One Ring, tap it again, draw all those cards, play another One Ring, repeat the process, letting you draw into all the One Rings and cards you need to win the game. While the protection clause makes it so your opponent just has to sit there and watch as you win the game. Kind of like a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which led to the One Ring getting banned in Modern, which also sucked for all the Modern players who bought 4 One Rings intending to use the card. I get that opening a crazy card in a pack might feel exciting for a moment, but after you pause and think about playing the card, if it just auto-wins easily, is that really a fun or interesting card? Insanely powerful auto-win cards reduce the skill level of the game overall, because drawing it wins the game for free. You don't have to make any other decisions. Or the card is so much more powerful that deciding between that and other cards is irrelevant. You always pick the overpowered strong one. The textured nature of deck building and gameplay slides away if one card is obviously the correct choice to put in your deck and play. Anyway, 60 card formats, am I right? What a shame. Standard used to be the centerpiece of the game. Before all that power creep, Standard was quite a bit cheaper, since each card wasn't trying to be so powerful that it shows up in every format. This also made Standard a format where more cards were viable because of the lower power level. It also meant Standard was a cheap format that new players could get into because they could use the cards they opened in recent sets in their meta Standard decks. But with a higher power Standard and a much larger card pool, this isn't the case as much. Most of the cards you open are probably not going to be relevant in any Standard deck. They're probably just commander cards. Additionally, the massive uptick in bans has made the extended rotation of Standard irrelevant. Either a new set drops and it has some insane bomb that stomps all current decks, so your deck's functionally rotated because you need to play the new card, or the new bomb is not quite strong enough to overpower the old bomb, which means the old one has to get banned so they can sell packs of the new set, which means your deck functionally rotates because your card got banned. We also get more rares and mythics than ever, so when one is playable, it becomes more expensive since it's harder to find. This is why Roaming Throne is the most expensive rare in a Standard set ever, and part of why Badgermole Cub is so pricey. Avatar has 20 mythics compared to Innistrad's 16, and a large portion of those mythics in Avatar are for EDH. So the Standard playable ones are much harder to open naturally. It makes me think about how the designers are accounting for all this. Are they making these changes purposefully to create a mini rotation every time a set is released or a ban list is updated? Is this what the designers intended for Standard to be? And Modern, damn, it just makes me so sad. They changed the rules of the format so they could inject more power creep into it directly. Just look at Mox Opal to understand how I feel. I played artifact decks, which became too strong because Urza got printed. So they banned Opal, which made Urza bad, so now my deck is banned and unplayably bad. I then sell my Opals and Urzas to afford to change my deck to a new Modern Horizons deck. And then I have to change it again for Modern Horizons 2, because that power crept everything, and my Modern Horizons 1 deck is worthless. Then Modern Horizons 3 power creeps my Modern Horizons 2 deck again, and then they've power crept things so much that they ended up unbanning Mox Opal, which now would cost me quadruple the price that I originally paid for it to get the playset back. And still, even with Mox Opal, Urza is still too slow to see play. So I can't even play the Opal Urza deck that I wanted to play initially when Modern Horizons 1 came out. All of this in the format which is supposed to be a non-rotating format where you can play cards for a long time. It's really interesting watching Gavin's video on the development of Modern Horizons 1. He talks about how they wanted to do Time Spiral again, but because Time Spiral would be a very complex set, they don't want it to go into Standard. And he talks about how initially they thought of making this a conspiracy style set, where it's just a draftable, complex format that then eternally will go into Commander Legacy and Vintage. This seems like the obvious solution. This is how they did Battle Bond and conspiracy sets, and those were very well received. Or they could have made it full of reprints like Time Spiral Remastered, which they actually did end up eventually doing. Yet instead, they chose to completely upend the purpose of Modern as a format. And also because of Commander's popularity, they had to include a lot of legendary creatures, many of which were quite pushed. I want to believe Gavin that this was a fun idea they had to change the format he created and permanently warp it, but I wonder how much of that was actually profit driven from higher ups. At the very least, the tacked on commander portion he talks about sounds like that. Obviously, I don't know the guy, it's a bit of speculation on my part. I remember when you could buy a budget version of a Modern deck, slowly win enough store credit to then upgrade the budget version into the full power version, assuming you played pretty well, or that Standard decks were very cheap and could easily last you for more than a year without major changes. It's no surprise we've seen a decline in the amount these formats see play, especially Standard. And I better not see any comments about how Standard is good now. There have been so many bans and crazy power creep warping the format. Just because that's calmed down for like a second doesn't mean the format is good. And the prices are insane. Of the top 10 decks in Standard, right now, only one is close to the $200 mark, which is a lot for a rotating deck. The price of these Badger Mole Cubs decks are insane, right? All of these changes has made standard and modern worse formats. They are more expensive than ever, especially over time since nothing you play actually sticks around due to power creep or bans. And all of that has increased in volatility. So why spend $900 on a Badger Mole Cub deck if it might just get banned tomorrow? It's simply much harder to get into 60 card formats since they are worse products now. On the board, it goes. Okay, I know I started with saying that Universes Beyond isn't the reason MTG is having issues, but the way Universes Beyond is currently implemented is part of the problem. I feel like people seem to think I have an aesthetic issue with UB or hate it because it's different or new, but that's not the problem. My issue is the product is literally worse. It is anti-consumer. Here's an example. You know what my favorite video game character of all time is? Wrecking Ball from Overwatch. Golly, did I grind a lot of hours on this character when he came out. This silly hamster makes me feel like I'm playing a different game than everyone else. When they're playing a hero shooter, I'm landing fighting game combos. Doing a double boop wall jump pile driver kill, what an insane character. Let's imagine Wizards partners with the Overwatch team to make a Universes Beyond product. What would that look like? Well, they would probably make some Hammond card. But would it capture the feeling of playing the character? Or would it just be a surface level comparison, like giving him haste or the ability to destroy creatures with low toughness? Like, I get it. It's a reference to the fact that the character's fast and can take out low health opponents easily. But to actually get the reason I like the character, I would need the context of Overwatch. It's more than just a JPEG moving around the screen. Yeah, this card reminds me of having fun playing a different game, but it doesn't provide the same fun. But it's even worse than just that. Let's suppose the Wizards designers do the impossible. They make a Hammond card that perfectly encapsulates the feeling of playing the character. I still would not want it to be in a Universes Beyond product. Here are my options. Either Hammond is in a secret layer, which means I won't be able to buy it because it's going to sell out in like 10 seconds. It's going to be scalped and invested in. By the way, anytime I say invested in relation to cards, please assume there is sarcasm and air quotes. Or instead of a secret layer, it's a full set where the cards and boxes are triple the price because the customer is paying the licensing fees. And they're basically reserve list, which means I have to fight scalpers and investors who actually don't want to open the product and play with the cards. And if I miss out on that, it's going to be so expensive in who knows how many years. But there's actually a secret third option. They could print this Hammond-inspired card in Bloomburrow 2 and simply reference the character Wrecking Ball, meaning it is in-universe and can be reprinted. The packs are cheaper, and there isn't inflated demand because of scalpers. Between these three options, why would I ever pick the Universes Beyond one? The Bloomburrow 2 option means I can actually get the card without having to either spend $50+ on it or proxy it. And everyone who wants the card to play it could do so. It's simply more consumer friendly. Universes Beyond on the board. If instead Wizards just made sets inspired by things, it would be way better. And yes, they could always do this. Final Fantasy could have been made without the license. They could make the exact same set, 1-to-1, with just different names and art. There is nothing stopping a designer from saying, summons from Final Fantasy are cool, let me make a saga creature to reference that. And no, Wizards would not have gotten into legal trouble for doing this. I know this for a fact because of two things. One, Wizards references other media all the time. Akira and Aetherdrift, TMNT and Kamigawa, Marvel and Ikoria, and The Fly and Innistrad. And those are just some MTG references off the top of my head. Magic references other media all the time. Also, just in case any goober tries to comment about how they would get sued if they made a whole set of references, no, they would not. The second reason I'm very confident about this is because all of these are just surface level translations of characters into cheap references. They're not actual copies of them, and they're not in the same medium. It is completely different. I also happen to know a disproportionately high number of lawyers and was able to check this with multiple attorneys. Wizards could have always stuck to the Godzilla treatments where they were just reskins. This might make less money or would cost more, since with a full Universes Beyond set, they can offload the world building and thematic ideas of the set to the other IP, allowing them to make sets in a smaller time frame with less effort. For example, the TMNT set only took 16 months, compared to the 2 years average time frame of a normal set. If the Final Fantasy set was a collab from the ground up, designed to be a set inspired by the game, with special alt arts of named characters in collector boosters, then Universes Beyond honestly wouldn't be that big of a deal. This would allow Vivoldo the Dark Mage to be the in-universe version of Vivi that I could get from a normal pack, and it could be reprinted easily in any Magic product. And then collectors would be focused on collector boosters to get their actual Vivi card. And then regular packs would be just for the in-universe stuff with a lower price point. I feel like that is a perfectly fine way to do Universes Beyond. This is why I don't really complain about the reskin secret layers. I think they're cringe, but it's just a reprint of a card accessible elsewhere, so it's not harming anyone. There's an additional problem with Universes Beyond that I want to talk about. I'm going to be brief with this, but if you want a more in-depth explanation, please check out this Distraction Makers episode to hear two artists discuss the problem. Basically, UB sets don't let artists make money off the secondary market when they normally would have with a regular Magic set. For example, the artists behind the One Ring are not allowed to sell the original artwork. A piece that Forrest says in this episode could easily go for $50,000 or more. That's a big paycheck to miss out on, because the rights of those properties are not controlled by Wizards. So the artists can't do anything with their own art. This leads to a significant decrease in what Magic artists can make from working on the game with these Universes Beyond sets. And if working on Magic is less profitable than working on other games, where you might make more money selling on the secondary market, how does Magic keep up with other games in terms of retaining the best artists? Now, currently, Magic has the best secondary market for this art, but that might change in the future. And of course, fixing this would require Hasbro to negotiate on behalf of the artists when making Universes Beyond contracts, so those artists could make more money. But that might cost Wizards some cash up front when making the deal, so it doesn't happen. Instead, they just pay the artists a little bit extra than a normal commission. On the board it goes. And seriously, check out that Distraction Makers episode for a more in-depth explanation. Wizards wants to have their cake and eat it too when it comes to collectors. They don't want to reprint cards causing people to think these cards are valuable, just so Wizards can later rug pull those investors and reprint the cards anyway. Collector boosters are not a problem inherently, but the scene boxes, pseudo-reserve list of the UB sets, and general price gouging is getting to be a problem. It hurts the game both in image and playability. Remember Magic 30? $1,000 for 4 packs of proxied beta. This product is actually fine in theory. It could have been a fun thing where you and 3 friends draft beta, which is an experience most players have never had. But instead of making this a product for players to use, it was a product for players to collect or invest or gamble on. The celebration of Magic's 30th anniversary became nothing more than a way to squeeze money out of the most wealthy players. And when you compare this to Collector's Edition, which was released back in 1993, it was a set of 363 cards, including one of each card from beta, just all together in a full set, retailing for $50, which adjusted for inflation is $114 today. Compare that to Magic 30. And unlike that full set of beta for $100, a lot of the collectible stuff we have these days is pretty mid. Even if I was someone willing to throw away thousands of dollars on Magic, there isn't too much good to spend it on. I mean, look at these avatar screen grabs. They look visually terrible, and a lot of the art is confusing. Look at Mirrorwing Dragon. This is a special printing bonus sheet card. It's art of Rand and Shaw, but it's just a blurry screenshot. Couldn't they have made an artist draw this scene instead? Oh wait, they did! And they used it for the art of Rand and Shaw. So we have 2 cards with almost the same art, the same mana cost, that come out of the same packs but are two different cards with two different format legalities. Isn't that confusing? Oh, wait, it is. We had this happen with Black Sun Zenith and Day of the Black Sun in a standard tournament. Why are the special promo cards that are more rare in packs just screen grab versions of art we already have in the game? Is this the premium thing that whales are spending money on? Also, Secret Layers. I mean, what am I going to do with this miscast? It's already a useless card, it just has funny art. Most of the layers are full of bad cards I wouldn't play in any deck. There might be some personal value you derive from the special treatments or art, but a lot of the monetary value is just from FOMO and the assumption that if you hoard them, you can sell them for a markup later. Even if I could afford to buy every secret layer, I wouldn't do it because I don't want these cards. I talked about this more in my reprints video, but secret layers are just not worth buying right now. The system is so broken and the value isn't there. Also, I love some of the other things they do, like the Dan Dan secret layer is a really cool, exciting thing. But is it going to be print to demand as a product for everyone to enjoy and play Dan Dan? Or is it going to be some limited edition thing for scalpers? I don't hate collectibles in MTG. I don't think collector boosters should go away. But I don't want all of the collectibility in Magic to be gambling on expensive packs or bad cards in secret layers. Pre-release promos are recently removed. They used to have a unique timestamp or have alternative art, but those are gone. And this decision was made to make it easier to move sets around and delay things in case a Universes Beyond contract popped up. Buy a box promos are also gone. Check out this Gala greeter I got from a new Capenna collector booster. It's an alt art because each language received a different art. Something cool we're probably never going to see again, especially because they stopped supporting a couple of different languages. There are some special printings with things like the One of One ring, but it was just something you gambled on. Imagine if that was the prize for winning a Pro Tour or anything else. When you compare the promos that One Piece gives out for just participating in events compared to the promo packs that replaced F&M promos, it's pretty sad. I wish we got more collectibles outside of gambling, but Wizards wants to push all that collectability into these packs and cut costs on everything else. Collectibles go on the board. Let's move on to commander cards. Commander cards are everywhere. This is not a surprise to anyone these days. Every set has a dozen legendary creatures plus supplemental products. This is the part of that slop article that I do agree with. I think we're getting a little too much commander. It's completely taken over the game. Mark Rosewater can't even put standard cards into standard sets anymore. He has this whole post about it, I'll link below, talking about how he doesn't actually like Commander very much, but had to face his Dark Knight and come to terms with the fact that he now had to design cards mostly for Commander. This post makes me kinda sad. The lead designer of the game has been forced to either make Commander cards or quit. I totally respect his decision not to quit. I'd do the same if I was him. I also recognize the reason Hasbro is doing this is because Commander is more profitable. Commander is the easy accessible format now. With all the power creep and bans in other formats, how else are you going to buy a deck for 30, 40, 50 bucks? Commander's the only option. How else are you going to buy a deck that you can keep on the shelf and not have to update constantly, not have to have cards banned out of it, not have it get super power crept? Casual Commander is the only option. I wish they didn't focus on Commander so much though. Commander doesn't need this level of attention. In fact, I would argue some of the tailor-made cookie-cutter Commander cards that homogenize an archetype are actually bad for the format. I think a large part of what made Commander popular initially was how it let you play a bunch of old random standard cards. It let you make use of your collection in a way that other Eternal formats didn't. And although the casual nature of EDH shields it from power creep a little bit, it's still not immune. The format has sped up quite a bit over the years, just more slowly than other formats. But making a set for standard would require there to be standard players, which there are less of, and there's more commander players, so you gotta put commander cards in the standard set to make commander players buy them, right? So that's what they do. Commander cards go on the board. This lack of control from the designers is worrying to me. Thinking back to my video on hybrid mana, this is what I wanted to say but failed to do so. That's on me for trying to make a topical video and rush it out. In the video, I talk about hybrid staples being pushed, and Some people responded by saying that would only happen if the designers all lost their minds at once. But my worry about hybrid mana is not that the designers are all incompetent, it's that a Hasbro finance person will crunch some numbers and say, hey, hybrid Cyclonic Rift sells more than Cyclonic Rift. We need to print that. And if they decide that those hybrid staples for Commander sell better, then that's what we get forever. My worry is that the designers don't have final say, and they're not free to make the decisions that the game needs. I mean, Mark Rosewater isn't allowed to make standard cards for standard sets. I just don't have faith that any designer actually gets to have the final say on any product. We actually had a recent example of this in TMNT. Wizards has depicted Raphael with a Jite, not a Sai. I'm not going to comment on whether or not this is good or bad. I am not educated enough about the history here to make any statements. But I do find it interesting that they made this decision. This is apparently an artistic, stylistic choice that the designers wanted and Nickelodeon signed off on. Then for some reason, they chose the art of Raphael using a Sai for Raphael's Jite. I know this is a source material card, but if we look at the Path to Exile, they do edit the source material. That's not what the original cover looks like. So why is this not edited? Or why even select this card for a reprint? Or why use this art specifically? There are other reprints in collector boosters. It could have been a non-source material card. It feels like the designers wanted Raphael to use a Jite, but some other team wanted this art and card to appear. Obviously, that's speculation on my part, but these decisions seem odd at the very least. I think the designers are constrained by the need for everything to power creep, to be a commander staple, to fit within Universes Beyond guidelines, to satisfy Hasbro accountants. Lack of control from designers goes on the board. One other frustrating thing Magic has been doing is relying on member berries instead of actually making quality products. A member berry being something where you just point at it and go, oh, remember how cool that was? Without really caring about why you are bringing it up. Like Palpatine returning in Star Wars. It's nostalgia slop, basically. Part of this is Universes Beyond just being references. Oh, remember pizza? Remember New York? Turtles love pizza. There isn't a story being told in the TMNT set. It's just random turtle stuff. But even without Universes Beyond, the game itself has this problem. What happened last time we went to Ravnica? They didn't put any effort into why we were there, or making it feel like Ravnica. None of the normal world building and quality was there for Murders at Karlov Manor. It's on Ravnica because a marketing team said players like Ravnica. Did you know Outlaws at Thunder Junction is Magic's 100th expansion? You should, right? Because clearly they must have done something special and cool for the 100th expansion. They wouldn't have made it some jank set that had an epilogue booster tied to it, which they had to scrap because players hated it so much, and then jam it in as a second bonus sheet, causing those cards to be really hard to get and weirdly expensive for a lot of them, and then fill the set with a bunch of member berries, like having Rakdos there randomly for no reason. Oh, but they did actually do all that. Because remember, the marketing team said players like Ravnica, so we have to have Rakdos. People love Rakdos. He's from Ravnica, right? Obviously, this set will sell well. It has member berries in it. On the board it goes. Many things in Magic that were once special have become normal. Full art lands, legendary creatures, free spells, foils in general, and much more. These were once things that were rare and special, used when a set called for it. Now, not all of this is bad. Collector boosters have tanked the price of foil commons and uncommons, and bulk rares too. Now, if you want a foil full art land, you can get a ton of them for pretty cheap. But tragically, these benefits don't solve any problem the game has, since a foil version of a common or a basic land is not needed to play the game, and doesn't impact the accessibility of those cards. They were already cheap to begin with. Plus, just because players like something doesn't mean printing all of those all the time everywhere is a good idea. Overprinting products is one way to make stuff feel less special, but so is stripping away special things. Pre-release promos, buy-a-box promos, community design cards, oversized cards and precons, and more have gone away or been greatly reduced. I can look at my pre-release promos and remember where I was, how the event went, and appreciate that, even if the card itself isn't used. I wonder if players will look at the Ninja Turtle cards they got from their Lorwyn pre-release and feel the same. Lack of special things goes on the board. There are many people who have made the comparison that MTG is like Fortnite. And in some ways it is. Trying to appeal to a wide net of people by doing a bunch of crossovers is something both games have in common. But I also wish MTG was more like Fortnite. When Fortnite began to take off, they invested in the game, making it smooth, bug-free, and put on big events. They had in-game concerts, big tournaments, and that crazy Marvel crossover that had like 14 million players on. None of that sounds like Magic. We aren't adding anything new or special or putting on massive events. It's business as usual with some stuff cut away to save a couple of bucks here and there. In 10 years, I think kids will look fondly on these big Fortnite events. But when I remember MTG events, I remember the fact that they used to be free, or pre-release used to have a cool bonus thing, or my foils didn't curl, or anything else which is just gone now. In 10 years, do you think players are going to look fondly on Magic's 100th expansion? Will players be nostalgic for Thunder Junction? Fortnite took the money they made and invested it back in the game. They knew they had something big and put effort into making it a good quality product. I'm not sure I can say the same about Magic right now. One final piece for the board. Real quick, while writing this video, there was a lawsuit, so I do feel like I need to add that real fast to the board. I'll keep it super brief. The lawsuit itself is not going to go anywhere, but it is supposedly about player sentiment, and I think that is telling. There are shareholders willing to sue because they feel players' attitudes towards the game is shifting. I think that means something even if the lawsuit isn't going to go anywhere. So here is where I try to tie it all together. Let's say you work at Wizards and you need to make a set. Well, the product can't require you to hire more people or expand the scope anywhere past normal business, and you gotta get it out quick. We also don't have the budget for QA testing, so if it's super precise, it's probably not gonna work out. It also has to be a one and done thing, not tied to any lore or require more than one set. Plus, we need to be able to move it around and delay it at any time. We also can't have the product provide value to players because that might hurt the sales of a secret layer later. It also has to involve new cards that are so powerful, enfranchised players will have to throw away their old cards to buy it. No testing for 60 card formats, we can't afford that. If it breaks the format, we'll just ban it later, who cares? If it's a Universes Beyond product, you gotta follow their guidelines and get it out in a certain time, whether or not the product is good or needs to be fixed. And if it's an in-universe set, then you can't interfere with our Universes Beyond contracts, and your set might be moved around. We can't negotiate for artists to have the rights to their work, they have to deal with that for less revenue. If you can't get a hold of some artists because that's a deal breaker for them, find someone else. We need to have some chase gimmick cards for collector boosters. No special things for anything else. All the special stuff in collector boosters for gamblers. Most cards must be commander playable, especially the rares and mythics, so power crept value engines and legendary creatures out the wazoo. Don't forget to add some nostalgia. We can't take risks with new concepts. Go back to older sets and reference those, or just reference some other intellectual property. Nothing special for pre-release, buy box promos, no cool things, no unique stuff. If it's not something players can gamble on, then it's a waste of money. Remember, we're not Fortnite. This is Monopoly. Cheap, fast, disposable, people are gonna buy it and one and done it. Also, Chris did nothing wrong, the numbers are up. Leading me to my last point, the designers have to deal with all of these restrictions that are profit focused and they don't get final say. I feel bad for these designers. They are told they have to push the envelope and make everything a commander card that's powerful. They probably can't include all the reprints that they want in each set because some secret layer is going to have that later. And there's more sets than ever, and I don't think that the team has increased to keep up with that. I'm willing to bet this is why we've seen uncommons power up quite a bit recently. They're now shaking up 60 card formats. Because so many rares and mythics are for commander, uncommons are the 1v1 cards now. Looking at each set just screams profit motive over artistic risk. When we originally went to Ravnica for 3 sets, Wizards didn't make that block because it was safe. Actually, it was the opposite. The design for Ravnica was radical and different. Here's a quote from Mark Rosewater's article. Early playtests demonstrated that having too many guilds represented made it almost impossible to communicate the mechanical flavor of each guild. To solve this problem, the team came up with the idea to spread the 10 guilds across the block's 3 sets. Each guild would appear in only one set. After crunching some numbers, the team felt that the best execution was 4-3-3. This might not seem like a big deal now, but the idea of breaking out the different 2 color combinations between sets was pretty radical at the time. Also, spelling out how exactly each block was going to function at the beginning of the block's design was something new. Back in the day, we figured out what the small sets were up to when it was their turn to start design, usually many months after the big set started design. Link to the full article below. And when they made Samurai vs. Spirits for Kamigawa, this was made not because Japanese mythology was popular. The designers wanted to make this and take risks. Mark Rosewater even talks about how legendary creatures were meant to feel special, so making a set focused on the legendary type as a theme was a bold and crazy maneuver. Here's another quote. There's a reason we limit how many legendary creatures we make, because we want them to be special. By making all of the rare creatures legendary, I guaranteed that we'd have to make some bad legendary creatures, because all the rare creatures can't be good. Even worse, it didn't really help the problem at hand. You had to open up a lot of Champions of Kamigawa boosters to even get an inkling that there was a legendary theme. This led me to the following lesson. If your theme isn't common, it isn't your theme. They learned that common legendary creatures was necessary to get the theme across, and that was learned from Kamigawa's failure. Again, an artistic risk to try something new and crazy. A link to the full article below. I wonder what some of these design articles would look like for a Universes Beyond set or one of these Memberberry hat sets. Would they feel as bold and daring and risk-taking? I doubt it. When Wizards originally made pre-release promos, community design cards, game day mats, were these made with the sole purpose of making money? Or did someone at Wizards think that they should make players feel good for playing the game, aspiring to win something, collect something, encouraging players to tell their friends, hey, look at this thing I won. So their collection isn't filled with stuff they gambled on, but rather things that they got for showing up and gathering to play Magic. All of these decisions are short-sighted, cost-cutting, and greedy, because the people in charge do not care about Magic the Gathering as a game. And by in charge, I mean C-suite executives and the board of directors. If tomorrow the sales of MTG went to 0, but Battleship sales went up so much it tripled what they made from MTG, those in charge at Hasbro would be very happy. They want MTG to be Monopoly, not Fortnite. A product that can be lazily reskinned on the cheap and printed over and over again, without actually putting in the extra effort to make any of these feel special. This is a trend we have seen over and over again in the corporate world. Someone comes up with an idea and makes a company that tries to provide something useful or valuable. And then it gets big and the company is either bought or taken over, and then the original creator leaves for whatever reason, and then you're left with finance people who are in control, not someone passionate about the product. I think Nintendo is a great example of this. Satoru Iwata was not an investment banker. He majored in computer science. This was an actual gamer in charge of the gaming company. Now it's more finance types in charge of Nintendo. And over the last few years, the anti-consumer cost-cutting measures can really be felt. This is why a lot of people had frustrations over Legends ZA. It feels like the game needed more time, effort, and resources put into it. And to add insult to injury, Pokemon is the most valuable IP in the world. These games pull in insane profits. We know they could afford to hire more programmers, increase the development time, and add more extra bonus stuff to make the game feel a bit more special. But they choose not to, because why would they? Extra content and features cost money to make, and if they can half-ass the product and still make a reasonable profit, why care? It's sad to see where Pokemon is now. A few years ago, I booted up Black and White 2 just to play it. I actually never played this one as a kid and wanted to jam some Pokemon. I was completely blown away by this game. It really has so much effort put into it, so much attention to detail, and I think it's the best mainline Pokemon game ever made. And comparing it to the Switch era, where routes are just straight lines towards a town with two buildings in it, it's really sad. And of course, comparing any modern Pokemon game to a fan made ROM like Infinite Fusions is day and night. One is barely covering the basics to be a Pokemon game, and the other is full of fun stuff because it's made to be fun first, not profitable. This feels like the direction Magic is headed. Each set more formulaic and similar to the last. Each special extra bonus thing cut to save $1, doing just enough to be a Magic set technically. Today it's the pre-release stamp, tomorrow it's the spin down, and the next day pre-release kits are gone. It's just 6 packs they sell you. I think all of this adds up. If Magic didn't do all of the extra cool fun things they had done in the past, the game would not be where it is today. I don't think I'd be playing Magic if they didn't have FNM, pre-release, Grand Prix, lore, special cool things they did for players. I don't think I'd be playing Magic if there wasn't a cheap, accessible, eternal format I could slowly build towards. That's how I got my first modern deck, spending a lot of time grinding store credit on my forever deck, which is gone now. Even though on a spreadsheet, a lot of this stuff might not appear profitable, it does affect your bottom line in the end, in the long term. And although I understand Commander is popular, it doesn't mean zero effort should be put into other formats. When I hear that One Piece pre-release kits have a special promo just for attending, and then also a pre-release promo pack and a special promo for winning a pre-release event, it makes me jealous. Why can't we have that? That's what Magic used to do. Emrakul was an alt art special promo you got in every pre-release kit at one point. One Piece also gives away crazy promos all the time for other events, online tournaments, stuff that Magic could do if they wanted to put effort into standard and getting people to play it in paper. Why do companies do this? Why do we end up with the circuit cities of the world? Is it not obvious that these decisions can harm the long-term value of a brand or company? Well, we can look to Jack Welch for the answer. This was the first CEO to really pioneer the burn the company to the ground and retire super rich plan. As CEOs' salaries ballooned and company stock prices increased due to leveraging and legalized stock buybacks, it became increasingly easy for someone to get into that CEO or shareholder position, hold all of that for a few short years, do things like layoffs, cost-cutting measures, boost short-term profits and revenue streams, thus jacking up the share price even higher, and cash out so wealthy your lineage never has to work again. And this works because it takes time for consumers to switch to other options or for competitors to spring up. Those cost-cutting measures and price hikes are genuinely effective at increasing profit in the short term. But when the CEO hits that point where they cash out, they don't care what happens to the company afterwards. The Jack Welch Guide to Being a CEO is and has been the dominant way companies are managed these days, and it is no secret Chris Cox has taken a few notes. This is why things like current sales or sale price don't tell the full picture. Yeah, Magic is technically bigger than it ever has been right now. People my age are adults with adult money, and we are nostalgic for things including Magic. We can remember the 30 years of foundation the game has built up, all of the lore, and I'm not talking about just in-game lore, but real-life lore, stories of players, decks, and more. A game built up over a long history, but that foundation isn't permanent. I am nostalgic for Ravnica, but in 5 years, I'm not going to be looking fondly on Karlov Manor or Thunder Junction or Spider-Man. It's like Monopoly. The game is popular. Everyone's got a copy of it, maybe with a specific skin they like. But how many people really love Monopoly, are really nostalgic for Monopoly? Additionally, I'm worried about the future of Magic due to the age of players. In a recent report, Hasbro said that the average age of a Magic player is 35, which explains much of the Universes Beyond products we get now. That is a bit of an issue. When I was a kid, I did watch some TMNT, but it was a weird reboot show where they were in the future. Look, I'm almost 30, and I'm too young to remember the heyday of TMNT. Magic seems to be chasing the same aging group year after year instead of trying to get more young people into the game. When I was a kid, outside of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, I grew up watching the Yogscast. This is what made me get into YouTube to begin with. Again, I'm 27 and I'm too young to remember Final Fantasy, TMNT, Jurassic Park. All this nostalgia bait is completely going over my head because I never grew up with it. And kids these days are more like me. They are growing up on user generated content. More YouTube, Roblox type games, and other social media creators are part of these kids' experiences. What is Magic doing to get kids into the game? And don't say the Fortnite secret layer. A secret layer, which is 4 or 5 cards for like $30+, is not something a child with no Magic cards is going to ask for Christmas. Plus, secret layers are like limited edition. It's like not something a kid could actually get. Is Magic as cheap and accessible as Fortnite and Roblox? Does Magic put on big events to draw in kids? Are we trying to build something unique and special that kids can latch onto and grow up with? Or are we doing the same nostalgia bait crossovers for the same aging group of people that other card games are doing? I don't think those other games are going anywhere doing this. And I think Magic's the same. This is a worrying trend. I don't think Magic is dead right now or anytime soon, but we are moving in the direction of death. And it feels like we got to do a 180 and fix this before it gets really bad. There is some breaking point we're going to hit. With the lowering of quality, sacrificing of cool things, and general problems, sometime in the near future, it might crash down. What happens when power creep continues and every format outside of Casual Commander is a turn 1 format? What happens when the print errors and quality control continue to slide? What happens when the new players see these Universes Beyond sets and realize they are unaffordable or things that just don't interest them? What happens when all the changes made for the sake of profit make the game itself less fun? This is when things might get better. Imagine a player walks into a game store. There are 2 events going on: One Piece release and a Magic Universes Beyond pre-release. They haven't seen either game before, so they ask one person from each event, what's going on? Over on the One Piece side, the players gush about how much they love One Piece, the event promos, and the special bonuses for winning that they're trying to get. The price of pre-release is also like $35, and that seems like a reasonable entry point. Over on the MTG side, players talk about how the set is an Overwatch crossover. The Magic player doesn't really know anything about Overwatch, but thinks Winston is a cool monkey. There are no promos for showing up beyond some random extra foil card that you can get in a normal pack. And that foil has a print error, so can't even read what it says. Winning gets you a couple extra packs, but nothing unique or special for showing up to this event as opposed to buying a pack later. The event is also not nearly as busy. The Magic player says that's because the last set was a Viva Pinata crossover, and the crossover between Pinata heads and Overwatch 2 fans isn't very high. So it's just a few Magic fans and Overwatch collectors trying to play. Plus it's like $50 because the consumer is paying for the Overwatch licensing fee. Do you think that a normie walking in on that will be enticed by Magic the Gathering compared to One Piece? I don't think so. But I do think One Piece and Riftbound are here to stay, and they will kick Magic's butt in the coming years. As the quality of Magic products dips, people who want card games will gravitate towards other options. Magic has been the only card game in town for a long time, but that time has come to an end. Magic's strength has been its head start. It got to build a legacy, history, and fan base by doing cool things, by being unique, by being innovative. But taking all of that away for a quick buck will look bad to new players when other games offer so much more. I don't see a scenario where Wizards is free from the shackles of capitalism anytime soon. I understand there is a big difference between fan ROMs and mainline Pokemon games. The company's gotta make a profit. But when a company keeps saying that they made more money than ever, sold more than ever, are bigger than ever, and none of that is shown in the product, people will eventually notice. They begin to wonder if paying these higher prices is worth getting less stuff. I really hope Hasbro will see these other games catch up to Magic and perhaps overtake it in popularity, and then realize that all those small things that were intended to make a player have more fun did generate profit, just in a more roundabout way. There is a beacon of hope. Let's circle back to Gavin. I see comments from players that all Wizards employees are evil, money-hungry goons, but I don't believe that. Look at Magic's best 60-card format, Pauper. This is a non-rotating format Hasbro doesn't think that they can monetize. Run by Gavin, and it is the best format by far. The way he has handled Pauper is amazing. Classic Pauper decks have retained relevancy even in the face of power creep and fluctuating metas. They try to balance decks without ever killing them, and they will test things or unban cards to try and make the format as balanced as they can and the ban list as slim as they can. Plus, it is easily accessible. Commons are not hidden away in a super common rarity like rares and mythics. They're actually cheap and easy to get. If all 60 card formats were handled this way, the game would be much better. I do seriously think that if Gavin was in charge of Magic, the game would be amazing. There are people working at Wizards who do care about the game, and I really hope they get more decision making power in the future. Okay, how can Magic fix this in a realistic way? Hasbro, if you're listening, this is how you fix it. Power down Standard immensely. Standard is a tool for longevity and a way to avoid power creep. Use it or you will end up like Yu-Gi-Oh! I know that means a few Standard sets might not sell as well immediately, but then when the old strong stuff rotates, those sets will be at the correct power level and people will demand them. Also, shrink Standard or speed up rotation or do something to adjust the price of it. Make Standard cheaper. Have it as a low power, cheap format for players to get into easily, where they can crack normal, regular packs and use them in regular Standard decks that are competitively viable. Then reprint the eternally viable cards with special treatments in reprint sets to make those eternal formats more accessible and stable. This also preserves EDH. The freedom of brewing that the format was built on will still exist. You don't need to make everything a commander card for commander players to play it. In casual EDH, you don't need a new commander to be overpowered. In fact, you probably don't want that. How many people complain about Beevuu getting removed 10 times in a game, and they can't even use the card? This way, you can just focus on the quality of 60 card formats, and then make a legendary creature with the new set mechanic of mid power, and then commander players will buy that because they want the new set mechanic in the command zone. And you can still make commander products, just add separation between the commander products and the non-commander products. Plus, the most popular commanders are from precons anyway. That's where commander players put the money. Double dipping and making every set for everyone means it's not going to be a perfect set for anyone. Additionally, hire a couple more employees to fix the quality issues, or cut back on sets or something. There's so many other games out there with better promos and foils and just quality in the physical card. It really shows. Then create lots of random promos and alt arts and put them into different products. Bring back buy box promos, pre-release promos, and other promos for special events stores can put on. Create more reasons for players to come into the store and play the game. This is how normies and kids walking into a game store get into the game, is they see a cheap, accessible thing they can do. Why do you think Commander got so popular? It's cheap and easy to get into, and people actually played in the store. Create unique experiences and cards that players need to really be in the LGS for. Give the designers control over the game. Let them take risks and make decisions. If they need 3 sets to tell a big, expansive story, let them. People like big, expansive stories. They're interesting. They get players interested in what that is, how it's going to turn out. Get people who care about the lore to work on the lore. Make books or TV shows or movies. None of this is crazy. Putting effort into developing quality over corporate cost-cutting slop will eventually make more money. Pokemon makes a lot of money with merch and movies and TV shows. You know, stuff that's not the video games. Because they actually put effort into those. People care enough about the characters to want to watch a movie or buy a plushie. When Magic tries to do this, all they do is sell a crappy product without putting effort into making people want the product. Loot had no build-up. We spent no time with him. There isn't an anime where we see him do stuff to get attached to Loot. When the War of the Spark books needed to be written, they got some rando who didn't know what they were doing to write it. And they just pissed off Brandon Sanderson so he won't work with Magic anymore. Just so they could make a couple extra bucks, by the way. And that Netflix movie or show, how long has that been rotting away? Does Hasbro not realize why these other UB sets are successful? This stuff can't be forced or cheaped out on. It takes time and effort to make a profitable IP. I hate this narrative that people have that Magic's lore or characters are so bad and that's why we have to get rid of them for UB. Maybe we should put effort into making the lore good before it's written off entirely. I know that War of the Spark book didn't sell, but it's not because War of the Spark could not have sold. It's because it wasn't made with any care or quality. And at the absolute very least, we need a little bit more effort put into 60 card formats. I mean, just look at the difference in views between random Commander video essays that I make here on this channel versus videos put together by some of the best players of all time. People are just not interested in 60 card formats anymore. And I think a lot of that is the lack of effort Hasbro is putting in. This was a long video. It's a lot of my frustrations about the game in one place. And if you made it all the way here, thanks. I love Magic the Gathering. I think it is the best game ever made. I want nothing more than Magic to succeed, which is why it is so frustrating to see people in charge of the game put zero effort into it. All of this does really add up. Making this video took a long time, and it was very stressful to think about. So that's why it's one long video instead of 10 shorter ones. I really want to emphasize how it all comes together. Plus, now I have one big video I can point to whenever some random issue comes up in another video. The problem Magic is facing is it is becoming corporate slop, the cheap imitation of what it once was that so many other companies do. And if I could change one thing about Magic the Gathering, it would be to let people who care about the game be in charge. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my tier 3 patrons whose names you see here. If you want to support me further than just liking, subscribing, and commenting, click the link below.